asked why I film at a cemetery, and it's because it's less crowded than the park. There's less people. It's more quiet. It's there's a lot of green. There's a lot of trees. It's just more silent. And it's a beautiful cemetery. So, yeah, that's the only reason. Nothing really deeper than that. But it does really suit these videos in a weird way. I think it's kind of nice. So I wanted to share a really beautiful story. And you know how this unfolds is so drastically different for everybody. And sometimes it can be a really spontaneous, dramatic shift that happens. But still, there is this sort of processing that happens after that. I doubt that everything just completely goes to zero automatically. I could be wrong, but nonetheless, I do think that for the majority of people, this is a slower unfolding. So it was definitely a slower unfolding for me, and it did seem like there was this apparent moment where there was a dropping of the self, of the center, and then there was almost a clearing out of the remnants of the self, meaning meaning when there is identification with the body, with the thoughts, with the emotions, then there are a lot of beliefs, ideas, stories, ways of acting, ways of wanting to appear. There's extra layers of a lot of different things, a lot of different emotions, a lot of different energetic patterns. And none of that is a problem at all. It's completely part of the human experience, and there is an absolute beauty and perfection in all of it. But when the center drops, then they kind of lose their power. And so it appears as if they're still running, but they're really running out of momentum. It felt as if something was unplugged and there was the appearance of a self, and it almost acted similarly. In the beginning, actually, it was more intense, more full on than before the self dropped. So that was a bit confusing. But in the story, apparently over time, it really did diminish. When these patterns came up, it was still like full on. And there were moments of like, really? Still? You're coming up still? But overall, really generally speaking, it did feel like the more that was processed, the more of this emptiness that was powerfully palpable. Like there was just emptiness. And there was a sense that this was love. This is unconditional love. It's not a personal love that turns into hate. It's not in opposites. It's unconditional. It just is, and it always, always was. But the person is the veil to it, so it's not known. So there was this moment at the very, very end where the emptiness was so palpable. The remnants of the person were so weak, but kind of still there. And in general, it wasn't all the time, but there were moments of grieving my parents, my loved ones, the loss of everyone, the relationship that I had to everyone. It was being mourned fully, completely, thoroughly. And the depth that it was seen and felt was never seen and felt to that extent before. Because when the identity is there, it cannot feel what is underneath it. What is underneath the identity? What is holding the identity up together? Seemingly. This helicopter will not go. So when the energetic sense of I just really is not there, a lot of unconscious things is just able to come up, really. It's just conditioning, it's just patterns, it's just energy. It's unknown. This is all a story. This is all still made up. But to construct nothing into something, these words are spoken. So there was this moment where I was lying in bed. There was just nothing. Everything was nothing. There was just this immense emptiness, and this sadness arose within it as it. And there was this image of wanting to hug my parents for the last time. Before I die, I would just like to hug my parents. I would just like to see this friend that I basically died with. I would just like to see this friend who lives across the sea, and I would just like to hold his hand one time before I die. And my sister didn't come into the picture because I think I had just talked to her. So it's not that I didn't love her. We just actually shared a beautiful conversation right before then. And I told her all of the trauma and grief and sadness in this apparent lifetime. Why Suzanne was the way she was. Why certain choices were made. Like, it was so clear to me exactly why it all unfolded the way it did. And it was amazing that I could share that with her. And it wasn't forced, it just happened to. The opportunity just presented itself. And so yeah, I was lying in bed. I had those images and I was crying, but the body was just crying. Emptiness was just crying. And it was sobbing. And I wasn't sobbing anymore. It was just life crying. And I was gone. The me was gone. And what remained was what always was, which is just pure life, pure love, this pure emptiness that is everything already. This body is barely here. It's just an appearance like everything else. Everything that's apparently physical is barely alive. It just is this love that isn't separate from anything else, isn't definable, isn't separable. There really is no edge anywhere. It all just completely merges together. It melts into wholeness. It melts into completion. And it's seen that this was always the case. This was always complete. Love just was. Love just is. And there really was actually nothing to be afraid of. You were never gonna lose anything. You never really die. Birth and death is not a real solid thing, but it does feel real. I won't deny that. When it is the experience in the body, it feels real. But beyond it, when the energetic sense of me dies, it's seen that there is no death. No one ever died. What's left is everything. And you can never get everything, you can never lose it. It always just is. And that is this peace, that is this rest. It's not for anyone. No one feels it. It's not known. It's not comparable. It has no real quality. It really doesn't. It's not a believable thing. You cannot imagine it. It's so unrelatable from the perspective of the person. And I say that because the person will really try and figure out what this could feel like. And it perhaps can get a sort of taste of it in a glimpse. But this energetic sense of me will come back as long as it does. There's no real control in it because no one is there. No one, that sense of me is life appearing that way. Perfectly appearing that way. Things that apparently change, the things that go after the self drop, they're not predictable, they're not knowable. You know, for here, I did not lose my family. There's immense love for them, but it's not personal. It just is. And the actions here may differ from how Suzanne used to act. There is no care in it anymore. There's no one trying to manipulate or judge the actions of this body. It's just that rest. And speaking to my parents may happen. And usually it's great. Even when it's not, even when we fight, it's great. It's fine. All of it's fine. To a large extent, they're allowed to be as they are. And this body is allowed to be as it is. That's a huge part of the freedom.